Hey everybody, welcome to my very basic guide. In this episode, we'll be taking you by the hand and going on a real trip to the fascinating underwater world of godlike seafood that can grant you salty powers at the measly price of your land-loving soul. As you may have surmised, the Fathomless is an otherworldly patron that can represent a wide range of ocean-dwelling or simply nautically themed entities. Basically, any big, powerful magical monster that has some form of connection to water. In some ways, it kind of does tread on the toes of the Great Old One Warlocks, with, the emphasis on the tentacles and potentially malicious sea life that is usually a staple of the Lovecraftian genre, but the Fathomless is more aligned with the pure elemental aspect of the ocean, rather than the cosmic alien stuff that it shares the bedroom with. So, if you ever felt an affinity for all things aquatic, or if your group is planning a sea-based campaign, or maybe you're just a big fan of tentacles, then the Fathomless might just be the patron for your deep-sea-loving Warlock. As you ink the salty pact with your choice of ocean-loving monstrosity and shake hands with one of their unfathomably numerous tendrils, you instantly gain quite a few new otherworldly blessings, with the first one of the bunch being an expanded spell list at level 1. The Fathomless Patron's expanded spell list unfortunately does not give you free spells. Instead, it simply adds new spells to the Warlock's spell list, which gives the Warlock the choice to pick them up when they level up. Starting off the enlargement of your Warlock list, the first level spells Create or Destroy Water and Thunderwave are added to the mix. Obviously, some very clear thematic synergy between the Fathomless Warlock and being able to create gallons of water, or alternatively cast water into the void. Although, how often this may come in handy is probably on the extremely unlikely side of things, and highly dependent on your setting, such as if you're playing in a survival type campaign, then being able to constantly materialize clean water might actually be life-saving, though most likely it will be a niche party trick that you can pull out here and there for the average campaign. There's also the additional utility of being able to extinguish fires in a 30-foot cube, so if you're planning on being a medieval firefighter, then Create or Destroy Water might actually come in clutch. The other first level spell of Thunder Wave is decent if you ever find yourself caught between angry foes. Then Thunder Wave has the chance of busting you out of their reach while also doing decent area effect damage if they fail their Constitution saving throw. But as a Fathomless Warlock, no matter how slippery you are, it's still generally a bad idea to get that close to an enemy, and Thunder Wave has a good chance of not doing as much as you would hope for, and that you're probably better off just standing as far away as possible from the front lines. Going on to the second level spells, the Fathomless blesses the Warlock list with Gust of Wind and Silence. Gust of Wind is an interesting spell option to go for, as you can make some really memorable plays with it, such as blowing people off high towers or cliffs, or simply as a tool for keeping people away from you. But unfortunately, as a Warlock, there's probably going to be a lot more important concentration spells that you would want to cast, and most enemies can simply sidestep away from the 10-foot width of the Gust of Wind area effect. But Silence, as the other second level spell that you get, is actually pretty nice, as it can be used as an anti-magic sort of spell that prevents a lot of enemy casters from being able to sling out most of their spells, which is pretty useful as you are more than likely to find spells being tossed your way during your tenure as an adventurer. Moving ahead to the third level spells, the Warlock of the Fathomless variety gains access to the spells Lightning Bolt and Sleet Storm. Lightning Bolt does pretty good damage for a third level spell, and also has a less commonly resisted damage type than something like Fireball. But the reason why it is not as popular is because trying to hit a bunch of enemies using a straight line is quite tough. Most of the time your opponents are going to be spread out rather than being in a convenient conga line formation in front of you, which makes it tricky to hit more than 2 or 3 guys with a single lightning bolt, and therefore decreasing the spell's prospective damage output. But hey, at the very least it looks flashy. Sleet Storm is an area effect battlefield control spell that can be very useful in slowing down your foes and forcing them to move out of a fortified position. It also has the added bonus of potentially breaking the concentration of enemy mages that are caught inside the Sleet Storm. But unfortunately, it is also a spell that does not gain any benefit from casting it at a higher level, meaning that its usefulness for a Warlock is fairly time limited, since all of your spell slots will increase beyond the third level, and wasting a precious higher level spell slot on a concentration spell that doesn't really gain anything from it is not a good idea, since there are simply better concentration spells the Fathomless Warlock can be casting. Chugging along to the 4th level spells that Fathomless Warlocks can choose to learn. Their spell list now includes Control Water and Summon Elemental. Similarly to Create or Destroy Water, Control Water as a 4th level concentration spell is highly situational and entirely dependent on the type of campaign you are in. It can be useful if you are in some sort of naval setting. You can use Control Water to create whirlpools to trap your enemies, or create giant tidal waves that can crash into and capsize ships, or if you ever felt like being a biblical figure, then you can also part the water and walk through them without getting wet. If you ever wanted to become a waterbender, then Control Water will probably match your fantasies, as it allows the caster to mess around with bodies of water in many different types of ways. And speaking of bodies of waters, there is also Summon Elemental as the other 4th level spell that the Fathomless Warlock gets access to, with the specific restriction of only being able to summon water elementals, which handicaps the spell but also adds a lot of thematic flavor, which I can appreciate. The water elemental spirit that you summon from the spell is honestly not that bad, but also not fantastic. There's nothing particularly useful about the elemental spirit other than being a big bag of hit points that you can use as a watery meat shield. Its primary attack options are fine and its scaling is also decent, but in all likelihood there are still probably better Warlock concentration spells out there to be looking for. Finally, arriving at the final tier of the Fathomless Warlock's expanded spell list, we get access to the 5th level spells, Big B's Hand and Cone of Cold. Big B's Hand is a pretty cool spell with a lot of utility that any creative individual can make use of in many different scenarios. The fact that it visually looks like a tentacle is also a pretty big buff if you ask me, and a serious advantage against people that suffer from thalassophobia. Cone of Cold is the final spell that is added to the Fathomless Warlock's expanded spell list, and it's an okay damage dealing spell that has a pretty large area effect, but might run into some competition with the other damage dealing Warlock spells out there. But then again, 8d8 cold damage is nothing to sniff at. But of course, it's not just the special magical gifts that you get, it's also about the friends that you make along the way with your brand new Tentacle of the Deeps feature, which you also get at level 1. You gain a 10-foot long tentacle buddy that you can whip out on your unsuspecting victims at a range of 60 feet using your bonus action. The Tentacle of the Deeps lasts for 1 minute, or if you choose to create another tentacle. The Fathomless Warlock can create a number of tentacles equal to the proficiency bonus, and can only regain this ability to summon tentacles on a long rest. The tentacle itself can be used to make melee spell attacks with a range of 10 feet, using the Warlock's Charisma modifier, and if the tentacle strikes true, then it deals 1d8 cold damage with the added bonus of slowing the target's movement speed by 10 feet. The Tentacle of the Deeps feature also has a bit of innate scaling, with the damage increasing to 2d8 cold damage once the Fathomless Warlock reaches level 10. On top of all of that, the tentacle that you summon is also mobile, allowing you to move it 30 feet and do its attack using your bonus action on subsequent turns. Being able to move a 10-foot long tentacle 30 feet means that it's actually faster than a cleric's spiritual weapon, and its ability to slow down opponents is similarly to Ray of Frost, means that it will have a pretty easy time sticking onto most enemies that the Fathomless Warlock wants to tickle with their tentacles. All of these factors makes Tentacle of the Deeps a pretty strong first level feature to be getting, since the Warlock is effectively casting Ray of Frost on a bonus action once you summon the tentacle, with the only drawback being it's limited by your proficiency bonus, meaning you will probably want to save your squirmy friends on battles that require extra firepower and crowd control. And just in case you forgot your patron's love of the deep sea, another first level feature that the Fathomless subclass gets is Gift of the Sea. You've truly learned to sleep with the fishes now as you gain a swimming speed of 40 feet and can also breathe underwater without any difficulties to your landlubber lungs. It's short and sweet, but obviously won't be that useful in all cases unless you are adventuring in an aquatic setting. But even in regular land-based campaigns, there probably will come a moment where a salty monster will try to drown your party, or you guys get shipwrecked on some sort of deserted island with nothing to eat. And in those specific moments, you get to really shine as you have all the built-in tools to not only survive, but thrive as someone who has an advantage fighting against other seaborne enemies on their own home turf, and also as a warlock that can freely forage for food in the oceans without any difficulties. Soaking up the thirst of the land at level 6, you get the feature Oceanic Soul, where the Fathomless Patron kindly gives you passive resistance to the cold damage type, which is really nice if you're planning on fighting some evil snowmen or abominable yetis. But also permanent cold resistance is just good, even when you don't expect to be fighting back against frosty foes, since you never know if you have some sneaky magic in their back pocket that might do cold damage, and the damage resistance doesn't cost you anything to put on yourself either, so it's simply a net positive that may come up once in a while. But Oceanic Soul also gives you an additional ability to communicate and understand any creature that is fully submerged, kind of like Aquaman. This is nice since it's very flavorful, but also pretty useful if you're trying to figure out if certain deep sea monsters can be reasoned with, or if you ever get lost and want to ask for directions inside an aquatic society. It's kind of similar to the third level spell Tongues, but specifically for people that like speaking underwater. Another Fathomless feature that you receive at level 6 is Guardian Coil. It is a buff to your Tentacle of the Deeps feature and adds on some additional defensive utility. Using your reaction, you can allow the tentacle you summon to help mitigate 1d8 of damage to a creature that is within 10 feet of your tentacle. Once you reach level 10, the tentacle gets even better at being an edible shield, now being able to reduce 2d8 of damage. Guardian Coil is a fantastic buff to an already pretty good feature in Tentacle of the Deeps. Now alongside its damage and movement control potential using the Warlock's bonus action, it gives the ability defensive opportunities using the Warlock's reaction, which is very good for the action economy since Warlocks usually don't have much uses for their reaction. Not only that, but since the tentacle lasts for 1 minute, the ability to curtail damage over a longer battle becomes more and more valuable, especially from a feature that is not a spell and doesn't require concentration or any other resource. Taking you by the hand to level 10, you realize that the tentacles at your command can come in all shapes and colors, with the feature Grasping Tentacles, which automatically grants you the 4th level spell Yvard's Black Tentacles for free, and also does not count against the Warlock spell's known limit. Usually it is a wizard exclusive spell and one that provides a strong mixture of damage over multiple rounds and crowd control over its afflicted areas. So being able to access that as a Warlock is already pretty decent, but the Grasping Tentacles feature also further enhances its potency. Whenever a Fathomless Warlock casts Yvard's Black Tentacles, they gain temporary hit points equal to their Warlock level. But not only that, the concentration of Yvard's Black Tentacles cannot be broken by damage. Grasping Tentacles also allows the Warlock to save on a spell slot for the first casting of Yvard's Black Tentacles, and can regain the free cast once you finish a long rest. The ability to have one free cast of a 4th level spell is already pretty great, since Warlocks famously suffer from not having that many spell slots. These additional features to an already good spell are genuinely quite handy. Gaining some extra durability through temporary hit points is always useful, especially for someone that smells like takoyaki such as yourself. Also, the ability to more or less guarantee that the duration of the spell will not be stopped short is truly exceptional, allowing the Warlock to be more confident in casting a concentration spell, even in dire situations where you might find yourself on the menu. Finally, arriving at the culmination of all of your hard work at bartering for more power from your Otherworldly Patron, you finally obtain the level 14 subclass capstone ability, Fathomless Plunge. If you ever wanted a splashy exit, then Fathomless Plunge might just be your ticket to freedom, as it allows you to use your action to teleport 1 mile away to a body of water that you have seen in the past, as long as that body of water is roughly the size of a pond or larger. Fathomless Plunge is a group teleportation ability, allowing yourself and up to 5 other willing creatures that are within 30 feet of your person to be whisked away in a flurry of tentacles, and then reappear in an unoccupied space with everyone in your group still within 30 feet of each other. Your group can also appear within 30 feet of the Fathomless Warlock's chosen body of water, rather than simply being plunged into the watery depths, just in case if your friends can't swim or simply don't want to get wet. Fathomless Plunge is a once per rest type of feature, allowing you to regain its effects after a short or long rest. In terms of how effective Fathomless Plunge can be, the 1 mile radius can be somewhat restraining in the grand scheme of geography. Being able to find a pond before an epic battle that is also within a certain distance can be kind of challenging when you're off exploring the vast unknown, which makes Fathomless Plunge potentially useless if your dungeon master wasn't kind enough to give you guys a convenient body of water that the Fathomless Warlock remembers. But if your party does find a nice pond to look at and can finesse the situation to set up the battlefield close enough to that body of water, then having an auto eject button if things get too hairy for your liking can be campaign changing, especially since Fathomless Plunge recharges on a short rest, potentially allowing your party to traverse great distances in no time at all. But of course, all of that depends greatly on the map that your DM has created and the occurrence of decently sized bodies of water, making Fathomless Plunge sometimes useless, but still a very cool feature that your party can play around with. And that about does it for this very basic guide on the Fathomless Warlock as presented in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. The Fathomless Patron is a subclass that really focuses on giving the player a Warlock that is very focused on its oceanic themes, and basically has everything to do with water. So if you're ever planning on running or playing in a mainly aquatic or naval based setting on your campaign, then the Fathomless Warlock should be a top contender, if not for aesthetics alone, then for its myriad of water based synergies that are baked into its mechanical core. And even for people who are not going to be campaigning in a watery world, the Fathomless Patron still offers quite a lot to any prospective tentacle enjoyer. And as always, I hope that anyone who watches my stuff enjoys what I create as much as I enjoyed creating it in the first place. I'll see you guys next time. Until then, goodbye for now.